I'm here at my brother Tyler's house, and we installed these solid walnut floating shelves using nothing but pocket holes to secure them to the studs. They are rock solid strong, and we're going to show you how we did it.
And we're going to do it right now. Originally, all of these board games were stored in that closet, but I wanted to open up the room a little bit and store my board games so they were more accessible. The problem is, putting the shelf up top meant that the games would overhang the shelf by quite a bit, and it would look pretty tacky. So I told my wife, and she says,
"Well, what are we gonna do when Logan gets here?"
And I said, now that I have a solution for my board games, maybe we just have Logan put some shelves in the bathroom instead.
Actually, that was my idea.
Did I mention that I drove from California to Idaho to put these shelves in? Well, to be honest, we actually were on a family vacation. Went to Idaho, Utah, went to a wedding, visited some families. All the boxes were checked, and including the floating shelves. Prior to my arrival, Tyler went down to the hardwood dealer and picked out a couple of pieces of walnut. He asked them to cut them down to size, but he didn't realize that they were going to give him ends that were green that needed to be trimmed off. Now, I didn't come with any of my saw cutting tools, but luckily he had a saw on hand and we were able to cut the ends off. I used a box cutter blade in order to score a line. That way when I used the saw, it would cut a fairly straight line and not get off track. I actually recommend scoring it twice side by side so that the kerf is big enough to fit the blade. There were a few holes and cracks that needed some TLC. We decided to fill them by using Starbond medium thickness CA glue and then applying the accelerator. This way it fills the knot or fills the crack, and we sand down to keep it flush. Starbond makes fantastic products, and I highly recommend using their CA glue. Click on the affiliate link in the video description if you want to pick up some of your own over on Amazon. When using the accelerator, the CA glue dries super fast, maybe like 10 to 20 seconds. That's all you need. Then after that, once it's dry, we follow with the sanding. And because we used that CA glue, I started with a heavier grit. We went from 60 to 120 and followed with 220. And I gotta admit, having my brother there was really nice because I was able to say, "Hey, do the sanding, I'll be back in just a little bit." And he had to do all the sanding by himself. And as his older brother, that's really satisfying, especially when I have to do all the sanding all the time. It's nice to have someone else do it for once, especially these are his shelves. He should be doing it himself, right? Well, at least someone will agree with me, but Tyler wanted those edges on the shelves to be not so sharp, so we ran the sander along the edges a few times to soften up the edges so no one would get themselves cut. After that, Tyler and I brought the shelves back to the bathroom to figure out exactly where they were going to lie on the wall. It was imperative that we line them up against the wall along two separate studs. That way we knew exactly where to drill the holes.
Alright, cool. Thank you.
There are two other YouTubers who do floating shelf videos that use pocket holes to secure them to the studs on the wall. Nailed It and DIY Creators. I'm really big fans of both of these channels and I highly recommend them. So I took their advice and used my Kreg pocket hole jig to bore pocket holes into each side of the shelves that would be connected to the studs. This removable drill guide came from my Kreg K4 pocket hole system that I did a whole video about where I made a pocket hole drill station. Anyways, I didn't want to lug the whole thing to Idaho, so this worked out great where I could just transport this one piece and use it for this project. With the shelves cut to length, sanded, and pocket holed, I figured it was time to put some mineral spirits. That way we can wipe up all the dust and clean them really good before we bring them into the bathroom. We used Jasco's green odorless mineral spirits. Tyler said there was a little bit of an odor. I couldn't really smell much because my nose isn't that great, but this is what we used. You don't have to go with odorless. Either one will work just fine. When securing the floating shelves to the wall, use an impact driver. Don't use a drill. The impact driver is going to drive that fastener all the way into the stud as far as you need it to go. We used a 3-inch screw with a Torx bit head. These screws actually pull the shelf into the wall so there's no or little gap between the shelf and the wall. I'll leave a link in the video description so you can purchase these yourself on Amazon. They are great. After you secure the first screw, throw a level on top of that shelf. Then screw in the second screw. If you think you might be moving these shelves or removing them altogether someday, leave those pocket holes open and exposed so that you can remove the screw. On the other hand, you can do what we did and plug those holes with a 3/8 inch dowel and some wood glue. After you plug all the holes, then take a flush cut saw and saw off the excess dowel. Then take a sander, like a random orbital sander or even a sheet sander, and sand those down flush with your shelf. That way, if there's any imperfections, it'll take all that away. I would highly recommend using the same kind of wood for the dowel as you do the shelves. Unfortunately, we didn't have any walnut dowels and we only had a day to do this, so I had a little trick up my sleeve. We used poplar dowels and then stained them with the special walnut stain from Minwax. Of course, these didn't match perfectly, but I gotta say, in the end, they look pretty nice. And since we had to do some more sanding, Tyler went ahead and wiped it down again with some mineral spirits. These shelves may look like they're done, but there still is one last major step. You guessed it, the finish. Now we used trash bags and painter's tape to make an area big enough where we could go ahead and spray down these shelves. If you watched my previous floating shelf video, you'll know that I don't have the best relationship with spray-on lacquer, but I didn't want to give up and I figured we'd try it again since this was such a small project. Now the thing that I learned is that when you put mineral spirits on and then follow with the lacquer, you have to make sure the mineral spirits dry completely. Otherwise, the areas that have moisture will create flat spots and then the dry areas will have the shinier spots. Now this is a satin lacquer, so we want it to be shiny throughout in a satin way, and since we let the mineral spirits dry completely, it worked out great.
I want to give a big shout out and thank you to Nailed It and DIY Creators who gave me some really good tips in their videos on how they installed floating shelves with only pocket hole screws. Tyler, what do you think of the whole process?
I mean, they're way more secure than I could have imagined, and I'm amazed that we did this all in one day.
And we really took our time. It was a very easy project and you can do it too. If you want to see more floating shelf videos, check out this video right here where I install floating walnut shelves in my house using a completely different system. And after you're done watching that, we look forward to seeing you on the next video.